This is Twisted Passages with award-winning author Marie Sutro. Now, let's take a deep dive into the dark world of psychological thrillers and meet the authors who created them.
Hello, and welcome to Twisted Passages. I'm your host, Marie Sutro, and today we have New York Times and internationally best-selling author Liv Constantine here to talk about her new release, Don't Open Your Eyes. Welcome, Liv.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is an absolute dream to have you on the show. I am so excited. But before we dig in, can you start listeners off with an overview of what the story is about?
Certainly. So most people have dreams. I know I have lots of crazy dreams, but in Don't Open Your Eyes, Annabelle, her dreams start to come true. And some of them are nice dreams, but the vast majority are pretty scary. And first she thinks they're just nightmares or, just coincidence. But then details from her dreams start to come true, things she couldn't have possibly known. And soon she realizes they're not dreams, but rather visions of a future, and a future in which her family is in danger, her husband is dangerous, and there's also a mysterious man that she keeps dreaming about. So we kind of go from there, and there's a parallel story with her daughter who is talking to someone online who she believes is a young man. We're a little more suspicious reading it that maybe it's not. And things start to escalate as Annabelle's trying to figure out what's going on. But the problem is that nobody really believes her. And some of the things that she dreams don't come true. And she's done things to prevent them and made herself look, kind of foolish. So it's the fine line between anxiety and fear and maybe what your subconscious is telling you, and trying to differentiate for her between that and what is a real warning. And so that's kind of the whole premise of the book. It's definitely still a psychological thriller, but it veers a little bit into a different territory than most of the prior Liv books in terms of this supernatural note.
And it was so crazily fun because we're worried about Annabelle. Is this real? Is this really happening to her? Or does Annabelle have a little too much stress in her life?
Right. Yes.
And what's interesting is, just like all of us, Annabelle has not gotten to the age where she's grown, has a great career, has beautiful children, without picking up some scars along the way. So You start to wonder how much of her past is influencing what's happening in her present.
Definitely. And her mom suffered from Alzheimer's. And so she also has that in the back of her mind. Not that she's forgetting things necessarily, but is she being affected by that? She's married to a doctor who's very practical, and he's sort of saying, your dreams can't be coming true. Come on, you must have heard this, you must have heard that. So it's very much also about, can you trust your own instinct and your own intuition? And sometimes that you have to lean on that when everyone around you might be saying something else.
The way you set up some of these dreams, not only to go through the dreams with Annabelle in real time as she's dreaming it, but then to see how it might be playing out in real life. And like you said, sometimes it's that question of fate and destiny. Yes. Are there things that we can change, or are there things that are just meant to be?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's something that I'm sure we all think about and we all struggle with. And, you think of something that happens if you leave your house 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, how that can have such an impact. And obviously, if we lived our lives that way, it would be paralyzing if we worried about every little thing. But it's difficult, right, to not think about those things. And so in some ways, personally, I think it's easier to kind of believe a que sera, sera, so that you're not so responsible. But I'm not sure, how much can we control it? I had a good friend of mine told me, I never met her mom, but she said her mom used to say, if you're meant to drown, it won't help to move to the desert. And so I thought that you're right. So in some ways, but that could be true. But then obviously our choices impact our lives and have consequences too. So I don't really know, where is that line? It's a very fuzzy line, I think.
And it's a fascinating question, because our choices do have consequences. And if we do truly accept that, oh, wow, there's this thing called fate and there's a map, and no matter what we do, this is meant to play out, then it kind of absolves us of responsibility for our actions, doesn't it?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that is, I mean, maybe for the bigger things, but yeah, for the smaller everyday things, who's to say? I don't know. Yeah.
It is a fascinating question. What else was fascinating was the complexity of the characters that you gave us. There were so many layers to them. And Annabelle in particular, I referenced, like all of us, she has a backstory. The way that you played that out throughout the novel and the way that you slow fed us a lot of those facts was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you.
Now, a lot of what's so great about this book is you do have these phenomenal characters, but it's also the relationships between the characters. And it seemed to come down to a lot of need versus want relationships. Obviously, she has a teenager, so a teenager is going to be very want driven versus need driven. But even for Annabelle herself, there's things she wants versus things she needs. And I was wondering, how much of that do you think plays out for all of us? Do you think just because we become adults, we ever kind of get control of the want versus need drive?
Well, maybe some people do, but I think it's very hard. And I think for Annabelle in particular, you're right. She's in a position where, she's balancing her career, her role as a wife, her role as a mother, all of these things, as a daughter earlier in the book, when you go back, and she doesn't always have time to think about what she really wants. And even when she thinks about it, when she's struggling with these career choices, well, if I take this promotion, I'm going to be around my children less. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? And then she's worrying really about how all of her choices not just affect her, but affect everyone around her. And I feel as, women, oftentimes that really is a lot of that on our shoulders. It isn't just what do we want, right? It's how do what we do and what we want, how does that affect the people that we love and the people that we are, that are in our orbit. And it's a difficult thing. So she definitely does, but I'm not sure she's really got time. And then especially when all of this angst happens with her dreams, all she can think about is just trying to keep everybody safe. So yeah, there is a fun bonus chapter that kind of tells you a romantic bonus chapter after the story, so that anybody who pre-orders will get that, and it's not a part of the book. So yeah, yes.
That is phenomenal. Nothing like an Easter egg out there.
Right, yes.
Again, in the vein of relationships, there's different types of love featured in this book. And there's always complexity to love. There's the comforting love that parents have for their children and sometimes friends have for each other. And then there's passionate love in intimate relationships. And you played on the different elements that go into those very well. Was that something that interests you about kind of the complexity of us humans and how we interact and what we want in life?
Sure. I mean, I think love it's such a broad term, but it's such an important part, right? I think most of us, want and need love in our lives, whether that comes, as you said, from a parent-child relationship, a friendship, loving yourself, which is often neglected, right? Because we're so busy loving others. And then, yes, I mean, the love in a marriage. And I think it was interesting to explore, again, for Annabelle, the torrid, passionate love that she has, that maybe here, and then the stable, perhaps deeper love in a marriage, and how does the heart deal with that? And when faced with both, right? I mean, one may seem, obviously the passionate is exciting and this and that, but is it sustainable? And how important is that? So those are all issues that she's dealing with, and things that are happening in her life that she has to decide how she's going to react to.
The really hard part for us as readers empathizing with Annabelle is she's trying to sleep and she's having these, oh my God, horrible dreams.
Yes.
And she's busy all the time. She's a career woman. She's got kids. And then in her waking time, these dreams and the potential that they're foretelling the future is just really putting the screws to poor Annabelle.
Yes. She's definitely having a lot of sleepless nights. I'm sure she is very tired. Yes.
She really is. And one of the things I thought was so great about this was the title and how well it fit the story. Can you
Mm.
tell me a little bit about how it came about? Was that a you thing or your publisher or?
It's always a collaboration, and titles are, it's so funny. Occasionally a title will come right away and it's super easy, but for the most part, they are so hard. And you go through just a million iterations. And I think there were probably maybe 10 variations of the Don't Open Your Eyes. And then finally, like that one seemed to hit. And then they did such a brilliant job with the cover. I mean, the whole team really at Penguin and Valentine and Bantam, they've been amazing. So yeah, it just seemed to work perfectly because don't open your eyes, because who knows what's going to happen when you wake up from that dream. Like you almost just want to stay in, unconscious state. I mean, obviously you want to wake up, but it had, I feel, enough of like an ominous tone, but also fit the story. So I'm glad that you think it was a good choice.
And it also resonated in different ways, I thought, because there's some themes that pop up in the story. Don't open your eyes. And we talk about comfortable love versus passionate love, and the things that we need versus the things we want. There is a point, I think, for all of us where we wonder, with social media nowadays, people get so siloed with information that's coming in or who they're talking to or even who we socialize with. And I wonder if there is a place where we kind of don't want to open our eyes sometimes. We want to be in our comfort zone, and we don't always want to go out, even though the passionate, exciting thing might be very alluring. Sometimes we don't want to venture out and find out who else we could be or who else is around us.
Yes. I mean, and also it also refers, the don't open your eyes, to looking at your own life, like what you are saying, but what you think working, really working? And are you closing your eyes to behaviors and attitudes and relationships that maybe are not so good for you, but you don't want to see it, right? You just want to, and I think it's very common, right? I mean, we get comfortable, change is hard, and it's easier to, well, it's not really in the long run easier, but maybe it seems easier to just kind of put the blinders on and go along. And so that, it definitely refers to that as well. Not just the dreaming, but also Annabelle not really opening her eyes and looking at what she's really in. And this picture perfect life that she thinks she has, which of course no one has, is really anything but.
You mentioned earlier the points of view that we get, and one is her daughter, and framing a mother's perspective of a story versus a teenage daughter's perspective of a story must have been really fun. Were you going back and channeling your inner teen, or were there teens in your life that you were drawing from when you crafted this?
It's a great question. I think I was channeling my inner teen, which is probably still there, but it was challenging. I mean, I had to. My kids are not teenagers anymore. I have twins and they are 24, but they're still young enough to sort of understand, so there were certain things that I could run by them, and especially some of the social media stuff, right? They would definitely know much better than I what was in vogue. And like, there's a plot with like Discord, which I'm not on, but so that definitely came from my kids. And even the texting, I had to do a little research about that just to make sure, because obviously they do text very differently. And they weren't texting when I was a teenager, so I don't have any frame of reference for that. But it was. I mean, I was really concerned that I wanted Scarlett to feel very authentic as a 16-year-old girl, and hopefully, and again, you always get the help of the editor, but I think she came across that way. At least I hope so. Yeah,
she really did. And what I loved about her was that she was confronted with some of the typical teenage issues, but her responses to them were not always very typical. She's a very strong girl. And I loved that, because lots of times portrayals of teens, especially girls, is that they're so controlled by all of the negativity around them and all the interpersonal female dramas that can pop up, and life and love things that can pop up. But in Scarlett, you gave us a young person who maybe doesn't have all the answers, but she has a sense of self.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, she's difficult. and I had to soften her a little bit because of, I didn't want everybody to hate her, right? And because she could be a little bit, but then I show, show the softer side and the relationship that they have, and how difficult it is for Annabelle. Is her job is social media, right? And so there are so many issues, and you see article after article about how social media is hurting the self-esteem, not just of young women, young men. It's such a different thing that we never had to deal with growing up, right? And when you're in your formative years, I can't even imagine what that must be like. And they've just have always had it there, but it's kind of like having an audience 24/7, which we never had to worry about. And so Annabelle starts to feel guilty, even though her job with social media is not running things for kids, but still, she is promoting that. And so she's torn between, wow, am I a part of the problem, right? Is my job doing that? And it's just another, I think, issue that's going to continue to be out there. We have to figure out how to navigate, because it's not going to go away, obviously.
And one of the things that I really liked was there's a point where Annabelle's reflecting on exactly what you said. Hey, this is my career, and I've got a child, and another one who's kind of in that preteen zone who's going to be going into it. I think Annabelle actually calls it out and says how difficult it is for parents to navigate that world of wanting to give their children some privacy, but needing to give them security.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really brilliant piece, because that is a horrific thing, not only for the kids to be dealing with, but for the parents to try to, it's like, oh, do I go in their room and search their room? No, I need to give them some privacy, right? But then you don't, what's in there? So.
Yeah, it is. It's because you don't want to break their trust. And the relationship is paramount, but they're also young and not, their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until 25 or something. So they're very vulnerable. And it is a real quandary, I think, for parents and caregivers.
So one of the biggest questions I have for you is getting into the dreams and precognitive dreams. How far did you go down the rabbit hole in your research on that? And what kind of things came up for you as you were exploring those issues?
Well, it was interesting. I expected it to be more rare than it is, but it really apparently is not, which is a bit scary, because, I don't think most of us really want that to happen, but there really doesn't seem to be. I mean, I didn't go off into the tangents of some of the, more really supernatural things, but a lot of it just says that there just are, it's just a phenomenon that happens for some people. And I guess there are people maybe that have always been that way. It can just happen. Now, in Annabelle's case, I had that her grandmother, was a dreamer. And I mean, for me, like, I had one experience years and years ago where I did have a dream about a family member, and very vividly. And then about a year later, it came true. And it was, it was really scary that I had seen that, and there were no clues or whatever. Thankfully, hopefully that's it. And everything turned out okay. It wasn't anything horrible. But I mean, it was a difficult, like a relational kind of situation. So, and again, I don't think there was, but maybe I did pick up on something, and maybe sometimes people do. So I think, but in terms of like pure premonitions, which is happening to Annabelle, I don't think there is an explanation for it. I mean, I guess you could have, obviously there are religious explanations, and some people can feel that God is giving people visions. And I'm sure that does happen. That isn't what I was going for in this book. So hers were not religious experiences. It was just the universe at large, I guess, kind of warning her about what was going on. And as you know, without giving anything away, because it points back to some things that had happened in the past that she's not aware of. So it's kind of unearthing these things. And then, so that was it. I mean, I didn't go deep. And I didn't speak to any like dream specialists, but maybe I should have, because I do have very crazy dreams. I always would think I'd love to have a dream therapist, right? Not just like, what does this mean?
Exactly. I think we all need that. And I'm one of those people who dreams very vividly sometimes. And it takes me a while in my waking moments to let go of the emotions sometimes that I had in the dream state. Yeah. So as my husband will attest, sometimes you just want to give me a little space.
Yeah, haven't you seen like that cartoon where the husband's like, I'm sorry for cheating on you in your dream? Like,
Exactly. And you're just carrying that, as if it just happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fascinating and so well done, because I think we've all experienced that moment of deja vu.
Yes.
And it makes the little hairs on the back of your neck stand up, really makes you pay attention. Most of us brush it off within the next few moments of it, but some of that lingers, and it was so cool.
Oh, thank you.
You are welcome. Now, I know there is so much going on for you, so very well deserved, whether it's awards, whether it's film or TV development. What's coming next, Liv?
Well, the last Mrs. Parrish is in development with Netflix, and Jennifer Lopez is starring as Amber, which we're so excited about. And Robert Zemeckis, amazing director, is directing. So, don't know. I think they're hoping to start filming maybe fall or late summer or fall. So that's the latest I have on that. The Wife Stalker is out on Lifetime. That was made a movie. So that was really fun. That came out this past spring, and Valerie and I got to go on set and see that and meet everybody. So it was really, really fun. A couple other things in development. And then I'm working on my next book. I'm also working with actually the man who starred in The Wife Stalker. He and I are collaborating on a pilot and a hopefully television show for the network, which is the series I read under Elsie Shaw. So yeah, so now I'm dabbling, and I've also collaborated with another screenwriter for a screenplay for Everybody's a Liar, which is one of the novellas that I did. So now I'm doing sort of some screenwriting, some TV writing, and novella writing, just mixing it up, keeping busy.
Well, that is absolutely phenomenal. And for all of your droves of fans that are coming in, knowing and loving you, and for new fans who are finding you through Don't Open Your Eyes, where is the best place for folks to hear about all of the great stuff that's going on?
Our website is livconstantine.com, and that also then has links to our social media. I'm very active on Instagram as well, but all of the events are posted on the website, as well as again, as I said, the links to social media if anybody wants to hop on the Instagram or get on our mailing list. And we do an email every month, and we always do a giveaway with a couple books or something fun. So that's a good thing to sign up for.
Awesome. Again, thank you for joining me, and thank you for such a wonderful read. Everyone's got to get out and get Don't Open Your Eyes.
Thank you, Marie. Really appreciate it.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Twisted Passages. We hope to see you next time.